Human beings are curious little creatures. We need to have an answer to everything. And although we cannot always get that answer, there is one question that we always have. When Altseason.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Bitcoin dominance. Welcome to the FOMO Factory. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Happy birthday, by the way. All right? 2,000 views. Must be like 5 people now be like, what? He remembered.
I think I'm turning a little gay for you now.
No, it's just random, right? So, when Altseason. Okay, now, again, we discussed this quite a lot on the channel lately, and there are a lot of reasons to believe that it is coming, right? We have the macro, we have the Fed pivoting, we are somewhat far in the seasonality, the retail is low, and we have a couple charts screaming, Altseason! So, can't ignore that. However, I want to go over one more technical thing about the Bitcoin dominance. Now, first, for the people that are new and they came in crypto for some reason, they watch this video, they be like, what's Altseason, right? Now, Altseason is a very short period, often in a 4-year cycle, where altcoins overall durably outperform Bitcoin. Right now, I want to make it very clear though. If Bitcoin goes down with 50%, but altcoins go down with 20%, that's outperforming, and that is technically Altseason. So let's get it Altseason, right? Yay, we're gonna make so much. But overall, what we have seen so far in this market are two Altseasons, two real Altseasons, right? 2017, 2021. Now, in both Altseasons, it was a fact that Bitcoin went up during that period, right? So, yes, we got an Altseason during the fact that Bitcoin went up and therefore altcoins exploded. Is there a guarantee that in this Altseason, Bitcoin will also go up? No. There are no guarantees in the first place in crypto, but that's not necessarily a given, right? So again, it could be that Bitcoin is going into a bear market, right? And that altcoins just feel like, yeah, okay, we go in a little bear market. That's Altseason. Now, now that the positive vibes are here, let's continue, right? So altcoins outperforming Bitcoin, cool. Now, are altcoins outperforming Bitcoin? Well, no. This is the Bitcoin dominance, and the Bitcoin dominance has been going up. And that means that Bitcoin is outperforming altcoins overall, right? This is Bitcoin against everything else within the top 125. I often see people forget saying that, but the rest outside of the top 125 is not included in these charts. It doesn't add up anyway. So Bitcoin has been outperforming these alts. Now, is that like weird? Not necessarily. I mean, again, we had an Altseason in the post-halving year, and the second Altseason was in the post-halving year. Now, that's not a fuck ton of data, but it's not that weird that we are now again in the post-halving year, and that before this, like, there was not an Altseason yet, right? So I expect it based on the seasonality today, now, well, this year, right? This year, based on the seasonality. Now, that's open to interpretation, right? Again, if you look at 2017, right? The Bitcoin dominance started to really fall down in March. It's now May. It's different. Like, cool. Then again, it also had a run in December. And in 2021, it kind of started in January right off the bat, took a little pause, and then really went on in March. So, based on the seasonality, yeah, I mean, it could be that it happens anytime. It could be that it happens in November, December, and it would not be all that different actually. And after all, every cycle does its own thing, right? So that's the seasonality. Cool. Seasonality. Do we have something for that? That wasn't the right one. Nah, we don't have that. Seasonality check. Cool. Let's go into the chart. What is the chart telling us, right? And what I try to do is look at everything that makes sense except for one thing. Except I'm not looking at one thing, and that's the emotion and the this time is different calling, right? Like that's the mistake I think a lot of people make. Let's fully ignore that, right? Like that's not gonna help us. Therefore, let's look at the seasonality. Let's look at the charts. Let's look at the retail. Let's look at the sentiment and the charts, right? Like that's all going to give us a picture. So seasonality check, charts, cool. So if we look at the chart at this moment for the Bitcoin dominance, I see something pretty interesting. This is one big fucking rising wedge, right? And the interesting thing with this rising wedge, and if you don't know what rising wedges are, that's this basically, where it makes higher highs and higher lows. And you might be like, yeah, but that's a bullish pattern, right? Yes, it is bullish, but eventually the breakout of that wedge is more often to the downside. So, and again, not a guarantee, but that's just the falling wedge target, right? So we are in somewhat of a gigantic rising wedge right now. Now, the target for a rising wedge like this, at least the first target is, and yeah, that's with this chart. It's a little like, hey, we started here, right? Or earlier actually, but it tested the downside of this wedge here. Right, so this should be, if we have a real breakdown or reversal, right, this should be the first target where it started. Now, if we, let's set something over there and let's make it a little like, you know, not exactly, because if you work with exact trend lines to wait for something to get hit, you always should have a little spare room, right? Now, the funny thing is actually that if we take this all the way here, it lines up with quite some, if you put it a little lower maybe, but it lines up with a lot of support right there. So I think that that's kind of cool actually. But that first target should be around 55% or so. And I'll try to make it make sense later if you're like, oh, 55%, hey, I can buy it. And, you know, you have no fucking clue, of course. We'll talk a little bit about what that could mean for prices, right? So, we are in this rising wedge. Well, at least we were in this rising wedge, right? If you look at it, we broke below. We found some support. Like, it's not if you break down out of a rising wedge that it's a one straight candle to the downside, right? So that's something to keep in mind. We can have bounces, and we can even have this as resistance right now, right? But yeah, it's going to the upside. However, there is another piece of support lost, and that's only a good thing, right? We used to use this trend line to climb up, right? That was the support. However, we lost it, and now it's at least not support, but resistance. Cool. However, again, a chart can do something like this, right? Could be. So what could be the target if we go to the upside? It's already going to the upside. What could be the target? Well, I think that if you apply Fibonacci to this, this works just as well on dominance, because dominance is also basically, why does charting work on assets like, for example, Bitcoin? Because there are people, they have an entry and they have an exit, and it gives you just the, like, for example, with Bitcoin, it shows right here, like, hey, a lot of people are buying at this place. It's not that there's a trend line and that it automatically bounces from there, but it has something to do with the fact that people, they are defending their entry or they're buying right here, right? Like, it's all psychology. And on the dominance, it is nothing different actually, but then not from Bitcoin to dollar, but more from altcoins to Bitcoin and Bitcoin to altcoins, whatever, right? So I think that this applies very well actually. And if you use a FIB tool on this and you take it from the last breakdown, you can see that there are a couple targets. But what I think is quite interesting, bear case scenario for the altcoin maxis, if you look at the 1.618, comes in at around 67% or so, right? That lines up with this upper trend line of the rising wedge and this lower one, yeah, and the 618, pretty much, right? So if we get there, then I think that this is going to be a piece of big resistance, actually. So let's, make a red box there so you can refer to me in a later video how wrong I was about that, right? Now, if you look at the other breakdown that we had, right? We also had a breakdown right here in November 2024. And you can see that if you take that, we came pretty close to that 1.618, right? And you don't have to exactly hit it, of course, right? Therefore, there's a box, another line. But we came pretty close. So we know that that level, it means something, right? So that's if the Bitcoin dominance decides to have one last run. However, I do think that the ultimate target to the downside, that's also something we should consider, right? If you look at how that went last cycle, where did the Bitcoin dominance eventually go down to? Slightly quite, below the 786. Cool. If you assume that, this was the top or something like this is going to be the top for this cycle, you can apply the same, right? So let's do that. And then, wrong way around, sorry. If you look at that, then you can see that the 0.6786 comes in at around 45%. Now, last cycle, we went a little below it. I don't want to guess that we are going below it this time necessarily as well. But the 786 definitely means something again, right? That's here. And that happens to be where we had quite some, resistance in this middle area right here. So that's my eventual target, right? The eventual target to the downside. Now, there's more to Altseason than just the Bitcoin dominance. The Bitcoin dominance shows how Bitcoin is doing against the rest. That's great. But USDT, USDC is also part of the rest. And I'm not investing in that, right? So it kind of means that if Bitcoin goes up, the dominance automatically goes up with it, because USDT and USDC are not going up or down, right? Therefore, I think it is more realistic to look at the Bitcoin dominance without stablecoins. And if you look at the Bitcoin dominance without stablecoins, then it has a little less history, but this is what you get, right? Again, did we necessarily top? There's a good chance, but maybe not, right? But overall, does it really matter if it's stopping here or here, right? If you want to get into alts, or even better, if you have BTC to get into alts, then what is the ultimate best time to just DCA and make those moves? That is this whole area right here, whether it's at 70% or 72%, don't try to time tops and bottoms at all, right? So this looks pretty, interesting to me, actually. Another thing when Altseason, if you look at the Bitcoin dominance plus Ethereum dominance plus stable dominance, right? Because what else is there? Alts. That's it, right? So if you take everything except alts on their dominance, then you see that the market, it's sitting in a very clear distribution pattern, right? You have accumulation, uptrend, distribution, downtrend. Accumulation, uptrend, distribution, downtrend. These are cycle phases. So this looks to me like being bearish on alts compared to the rest of the market. At this point, it doesn't make much sense, right? And yeah, this has been going on for 2 years right now. Right? It takes a long time, but it doesn't mean that it can never go down. Another interesting thing is though that if you there are charts that you can overlay, right? And if you overlay, for example, the let's go to the 2-week time frame on this one. So quite of a big time frame actually. If you look at the stochastic RSI, right? What you'll notice right here on the 2-week time frame, it is sitting now at 58%, right? And it just had a cross through its moving average, and that basically took us to this last blep run up, right? At a certain point, it's going to cross to the downside again as well, and that's often combined with a pretty big fall in this case, right? So the momentum is still here, but also has mainly something to do with the fact that Ethereum is included right here, and Ethereum had its outperformance over the last couple of weeks as well. Now there's another chart, it's others dominance. And what is others dominance? Others dominance is others dominance, right? Others is everything outside of the top 10 in the top 125. So no Bitcoin, Ethereum, stables, and high caps, really high caps, right? And this going up is Altseason. This going down is everything but Altseason, basically. And I do think that at a certain point, I'm sorry for not having the right time frame, but the move is going to be that we go, you know, above this big resistance that we have right here, maybe retest it, and then go into a price discovery Altseason, right? We always have a moment where altcoins do well. We had a moment in December where they did well, but it was not really an alt season, right? It was just more a moment for altcoins. That's different than a whole season, in my opinion. Now, if I look at this chart, I'll be like, okay, we have this support right here, which is holding so far. We have a bottom right here, we have a bottom right here, right? So that should be strong. If you look on the weekly time frame, we just had that cross to the upside. It could be that we retest that moving average right there, but overall I feel like, okay, it's a better time than here, right? So that's looking fantastic, of course. I mean, we are a lot closer to the bottom there, at least, than the top, right? Now, there is another chart, which I think, and then we'll go over to the other factors, but there's another chart that kind of shows it all, and I've showed this a couple times before, but if you're new, hi, welcome. This chart right here, this shows the risk levels, and the higher the risk levels, the more you want to be bearish on that asset, right? So if you look at price color coded by risk for Bitcoin, for example, every time you sit at a very high risk level, and let me see if it's if you can see it on my screen often. Yeah, okay, great. So if you look at Bitcoin, the high risk, right, between 0.8 and 1, for example, was always the time to get out, right, basically. And that goes for a lot of charts. It goes for a lot of charts. But we also have this whole thing for the Bitcoin dominance. And the Bitcoin dominance currently is showing a risk level where it just went of 0.39. The last time it was that high was not even here. It was here in September 2019. That's 6 years ago almost, right? So the Bitcoin dominance is riskier than what it was in the last 6 years, suggesting to me that, hey, could it go a little higher? Sure. Is it wise to bet on it? Fuck no, right? Of course not. If this was Bitcoin, you would have pressed that sell button already, right? So that's pretty interesting to me. And also, if you look like, hey, in where does it go into the alt seasons, right? It always has a little moment where it goes to the lowest risk level, here and here. Right? And it spends more time at the 0.1, 0.2, and the 3 a lot, right? So that's, I think, pretty interesting to see that we are now at this moment sitting so extremely high, and that we have so much room to go down. So these are not the charts, but some charts. There are also other things that you can take a look at, like, for example, the Ethereum dominance, right? Ethereum is the biggest altcoin, and Ethereum is now coming off of a level, which it saw once before, twice technically, but once before, and that was in beginning 2020, right? And if you look at the beginning of 2020 for Ethereum, it was sitting at like, what was it, $100, right? 150 bucks or so, and it ran all the way up to 4,600. Right now, am I suggesting that it could do a 40x this time as well? I'm suggesting that it could, of course, right? I'm not saying that it will, but the thing that you should keep in mind, though, is that if you look at the Ethereum dominance, that's measuring how Ethereum is doing compared to the rest of the crypto market, right? However, here the crypto market has way more money than here. So Ethereum going back to this point would actually mean a shit ton of inflows in Ethereum and therefore in altcoins, right? Ethereum is still the biggest layer one out there. It has a lot of liquidity for the altcoin market. And I hope you understand that why Ethereum is just basically just bullish for altcoins. Now, also, if you look at Ethereum on its Bitcoin pair, right, it was not doing that well against Bitcoin. However, if you look at a chart like this, I'm going to put it on the monthly, you can also see like, hey, it did not see this level a lot of times, right? And we happen to go all the way down here again. And we happen to have the biggest bounce that it had since August 2022. Yeah, what a coincidence that such a bounce happens exactly at this point, isn't it? So I don't know why this line is here, but that's pretty interesting to me, actually. Now, if you look, why did I have drawn these things right there? Let me take a quick look. Not sure anymore, but it had something to do with this insane RSI cross, and that didn't happen a lot of times, and the times that it did, but I forgot the time frame. So that's another reason, and then we have others, BTC, what would then we have others Bitcoin, and others Bitcoin is showing how the overall altcoin market is doing on its Bitcoin pair, and that's still going down, and this is basically the opposite of what we just showed with Bitcoin dominance, as that was in a rising wedge, which is a bearish pattern. Eventually, this is in a falling wedge, which is eventually a bullish pattern, but this is not something on a 50-minute time frame or whatever. This is a monthly time frame, and it takes a long time to play out, but eventually the moves are going to be a lot bigger as well, of course, right? But overall, altcoins on the Bitcoin pair, look, we have a low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low. So far, higher low has a lot of room actually to go down to actually turn this chart bearish, right? That this period in the cycle is bearish. Yes, we know, but then again, that is nothing new. We are used to that, right? That's just the stage of the market. But to turn this whole chart bearish and to really make people think like, wow, are alts actually ever going to make up against Bitcoin? Yeah, one indicator is making a lower low, and we are really far from that. At this point, we still at least have to go down with another 40%, right? Now, compared to everything that I already spoke about and all the things that I'm going to speak about, I think that's just really unlikely, actually. So, lot of interesting charts that I can show you, but I want to go on with the next piece. So we had seasonality, we had charts, but then there's also the macro, right? That's also there. Now the Fed and their balance sheet. Yay! Great, right? Oh, that sounded, I don't know. Wait, I have to.
That sounded a little gay.
But it's okay. But the Fed and their balance sheet. Now, it's not maybe a real coincidence that if you overlay the Fed balance sheet, that you see that every time we are in QT, quantitative tightening, Altseason stops, right? Altcoins go down on their Bitcoin pair. Maybe again, maybe it is a coincidence, but maybe not, right? You see right here, quantitative tightening, altcoins bleed against Bitcoin. Quantitative tightening, altcoins bleed against Bitcoin. Now, the Fed announced that they started in April by reducing they're slowing down the reducement of the balance sheet with quite a lot. That's already good. And they also hinted like, well, QT likely to stop this year, right? And mid 2025 was said, but hey, I mean, you have something as things that being said and even maybe promised and things that are being done, right? So we have to see when. But that it eventually is going to happen, that's a given, right? Because what if they keep on reducing the balance sheet forever, then it goes to zero. Like that can't happen. So if, and so far again it is, if altcoins and Bitcoin, alts on the Bitcoin pair are correlated to the Fed balance sheet, and you might feel like, hey, why? It has something to do with people having the luxury to take more risk, right? Bitcoin is not considered a risky asset within crypto. Altcoins are, though. So it makes all the sense in the world. So if they at a certain point, whenever it may be, stop QT and even begin QE, yeah, and if it is indeed the reason, right, the correlation, then we will get an alt season 100% guaranteed. But then it's more a question like when, right? So that's looking at least promising. And for now, yeah, I mean, it's taking long, I know. But then again, that's also where the opportunity is, right? Like that's where you, if you don't get these low prices, then yeah, where's the opportunity? Like, so that's that. And then we have something funny, and that's sentiment. Now, sentiment slash interest or retail, right? And I think that this is also very bullish, but also makes all the sense in the world. If we look, and there are different ways to measure sentiment, right? I use this right here. This indicates how many people are watching crypto, YouTube, Twitter, etc. But you can also use Google Trends. You can look at the Play Store rankings. You can ask around, like whatever you want to do, right? But now, at this moment, crypto is a ghost town, right? The social risk is sitting at zero. Zero. That's a low number, right? Zero. Yet Bitcoin is sitting at near all-time highs, right? So what shows, once again, well, it shows that retail doesn't give a shit about Bitcoin, right? They may look at it, they read it on the newspaper, and they be like, oh, Bitcoin new all-time high. Yeah, well, whatever, too late, right? That's how my friends talk about it as well, and I get that, right? Shut up. They are not, I don't know if you also hear the sound, by the way, on my headphone. Otherwise, you would have think like I'm hearing voices or shit. Oh my God.
This man is beyond repair. Help him. You can donate if you want.
Anyway, it shows that people are not interested in Bitcoin. When is retail stepping in? As soon as altcoins are flying, right? What you'll notice is that retail really, like here as well, we had a peak when crypto went up, right? We had another peak more like, hey, we had COVID and people were like, what the fuck is going on? It's recovering, like, oh, what's the crypto market doing? And that's all fine, right? And then we went down again and we went up again, but overall the price like meh, right? And even when Bitcoin here started to really break that previous price, basically, right? All this resistance right here, the retail amount wasn't necessarily higher, right? Because again, people don't care about Bitcoin. It's whatever coin, right? When did retail really started to peak? Well, here retail started to make new all-time highs, right? Or at least cycle highs. December 2020, right? Now, we need to make it make sense, right? Well, we can, because if we look at December 2020, and let's put it on, yeah, whatever, the monthly is fine, right? If you look at that, that's here, right? What was happening here? Well, here, basically, altcoins, they stopped that range, and they, for the first time, really made it look like, okay, guys, previous all-time high, we are really approaching this right now, finally. Price discovery is coming, right? And it's funny because this peak went on until May 2021 for the altcoin market, right? That's the domino effect that it has. People, retail, they step in and be like, wow, oh yeah, altcoins are doing fine, right? And then here it's like a complete explosion because it makes even more headlines and more people from outside, they come, look what's going on, right? Yeah, I mean, it shows people have no problem buying here when the market already more than 10x. They keep on pumping, and therefore this is exactly where you want to be right now when nobody is here because the pumps are insane, right? People have no problem buying into it and offering themselves as exit liquidity. They don't look at charts like this. Like, they just look at their Binance or Coinbase app and be like, oh, that coin is going crazy, I'm gonna step in. Like, that's how I was as well. I get that, right? But it's funny, right? Like, the peak was May 2021, this peak, right? When did retail feel like, okay, it's enough? If you look at it, bam, May 2021. As soon as altcoins started to go down and clear that leg of that parabolic phase was over, retail was like, buy. That's what they do, right? You see there as well, this Bitcoin overlay, but you see that Bitcoin had that top right here, and retail 1 month later, they felt like, okay, never mind, right? It's always late to the game, of course. So that shows retail only comes when it's about altcoins, not about Bitcoin. Bitcoin can go slow but steadily to 500K this year. Some people will come and watch, but they will always feel like, okay, now it's too late. Like, and with altcoins, yeah, there's always a new altcoin, or there's always a cheap altcoin, right? Hey, this one is just $2. It's not how it works, my friend. Anyway, they don't know that. That's great. Now, again, if you look, like, total social risk is 0, right? We went there in 2017 as well, in December, or 2016, December. Cool, December 2016. When was that? Well, for Bitcoin, it was here, right? So Bitcoin was already like doing quite fantastic. Nobody gave a fuck, right? Bitcoin went from $160 to 1,000. Did a 6x. It's kind of similar to what we did right now, by the way. And nobody cared. Nobody, right? What happened to the altcoin market? Yeah, it's not weird, right? Because the altcoin market, that was not sitting at a new highly candle, right? It came from here. The altcoin, my Bitcoin went up, but the altcoin market actually went down 2x. So retail felt like, fuck that. It's not exciting, right? It's not an invitation to the outside world. As soon as there are invitations, I think the domino effect can start for Altseason. I think Altseason is nothing more than a domino effect, right? Something needs to happen in order to make alts go up first, right? Of course. What could that be? It doesn't have to be much, right? We have seen alts go up pretty hard. We have one leg right here and another leg right here, right? What was the huge news? I can't even really remember. It's just the market cycle doing market cycle things, right? Was not necessarily great news or anything, right? That's not how the market works. But what could be the first push for the domino effect? The end of QT, right? An insane Ethereum upgrades, kind of what we just saw, and Ethereum responded well. Altcoin ETFs, whatever. You can think about 1,000 things, right? Every little thing could be the trigger to make the market in its current state, without the other retail yet, go up, because the money is already here, right? If you look at the total crypto market, it's sitting higher than what it was in 2021 when we were in full alt season, right? So the money is already here. But where's the money then? Well, the money is sitting in Bitcoin, right? Therefore, you see the Bitcoin dominance being up. So if there is a narrative or whatever people need in order to make the Bitcoin dominance go down and put it into altcoins, we can already pump the altcoin market easily with the current money that we have. And that is going to be the invitation to the outside world that they feel like, whoa, these altcoins are going crazy. Like, whoa, okay, okay, let's step in, right? And that retail that comes in, like we showed, has no problem in buying into this candle, this one, and make it go completely nuts. You have to, again, realize, we saw, like the retail, the current social, it's sitting at 0, right? 0. Yet, without all these people, we just have a 90% move to go to the new all-time high. Yeah, when we go past all-time highs, you bet that people from the outside are going to look like, oh, hey, let me not miss this. You already did, sir. Right? So, therefore, I think that this alt season right now or whenever it comes is going to be the one that you are waiting for. And when it comes, it's going to be a crazy one, actually. Right? Again, we don't even need the money from these new people because we already have enough. But that will also come. Plus the money printers and whatever. Right? So, yeah, compare that with the macro part, the chart part, the brain fart. Why doesn't this work? Oh, that's the wrong one. Anyway, this I don't know. But compare that with everything that we already spoke about. Yeah, I can add it up, and it makes a lot of sense to me, actually. Now, if we look at very simple, one more charting thing, is this. There are people saying, like, it already topped out, right? Whatever the reason may be. They may feel like, yeah, there are more altcoins right now. Sure, I mean, there are more altcoins right now, right? The liquidity is a little more spread, but it's not that extreme as everybody says. These 40 million altcoins, I think that 35 million of them at least are dead and or rugged, right? That's thanks to the whole pump fund thing. Like, yeah, the number is of course very high, but the liquidity actually cannot go there, even if you knew about all these coins, because they are already down the drain, right? Nevertheless, there are more altcoins. So, of course, right, it takes more liquidity to pump it here than here, sure, right? But then again, also, like I said, there is more. So that adds up with each other, right? We now have a Bitcoin over 100K. Yeah, that can pump altcoins more than last cycle when Bitcoin was going from 30 to 60. So, yeah. Also, chart-wise, by the way, it's pretty nuts. But if you look at the RSI on the monthly, so huge time frame, huge moves, you can see that the RSI is about to cross its moving average. Yellow is the moving average, basically, for the RSI, and the purple is the RSI. Now, that's also psychological because it's above a number that it's been on average. So more people are in profit. The market just looks greener overall. It's better, and people they just buy into green candles. That's just how it works, right? So that's looking pretty freaking fantastic to me, actually. And if you look at the last times this happened, we had it happen over here, where the purple was going below the yellow. We'll take a look at the chart in a bit. And we had it here. We had it, yeah, really sustainably here, but also here a little bit. And we had it here. Now, I didn't look at the rest of this. I have no idea how that looks like. But I'm betting that I want to say that every single one looks bullish, right? We have this one right here, at least. On the monthly chart, doesn't look spectacular, but this is the November-December run that made a lot of people a lot of money, right? So that's already one that checks off with a huge move. Then we had this one right here. Was basically the start of the bull market. So that's also second one checks off with a huge fucking move. Then we have the next one. I don't want to spoiler the other ones, also not for myself. So that's here. This one right here, okay, fuck that. This one right here checked off the 2021 bull market. So that's 3. This one right here was, it looks less big actually, but if you look at it, where it went from the wick until this point was an 83% move. That's all we need now to get to new all-time high. So that one checks off for sure. And the other one in April 2019 was the 2019 mid rally. 5 out of fucking 5. Boom! Got it. That's nice, right? And I mean, it's not like... Be careful, because the cross is not a sure thing yet, okay? We can theoretically get something like this, right here, where we look like we're about to cross, right here and here, right? But not really, and go down again. Yeah, and that led to a small bull market, or bear market. So, so it's not set in stone yet, but the setup looks good. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Altseason. I know a lot of people, they don't like that kind of content these days because we are only allowed to talk about Altseason when everything is going up and not when you have the time to still get in before it's too late. I know, I get that. We should be fucking bearish right now. But I do think that if you look at certain setups, that it's not too late and that we are at least not buying anywhere close to the top if we're talking about it today. So that's looking fantastic. And yeah, then the kind of altcoin. Oh yeah, I said, like, what does it mean, by the way, if the Bitcoin dominance goes to maybe, let's say, the first target, 55%. That's hard to tell, right? It just really depends on what Bitcoin does while that happens. Then you can calculate, and then we have to now predict what Bitcoin is going to do, and that's not possible, right? But all I can say is this. The way you can kind of calculate it for yourself, if you want, is during this move that the Bitcoin dominance, went down, right here, Bitcoin dominance went down, Bitcoin went up in a total from, 103K to 104K or whatever, right? Like, it had a decent move overall, kind of sideways-ish, right? So Bitcoin did not do that spectacular. But that was during a downwards move of 5%, let's say, right? Since the beginning of May. If you look at the beginning of May, it was here, this part right here, the altcoin market went up with 37%, right? So it showed that if Bitcoin goes somewhat sideways, the Bitcoin dominance goes down with 5%, that the altcoin market goes up with 7 times what like the dominance did, like 37%. So you can go back now and speculate, right? You can say like, okay, you know, the first target down, first target, right, is yeah, anywhere between 12 and 14%. Let's round it up, right? Let's call it 15%, easy math. So again, if we hit this first target and Bitcoin again does kind of the same in that period like what it did over here, then it just means that the altcoin market doesn't go up with 37%, but that it goes up with, yeah, what's 37 times 3? 111, I think so. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, if that's the case, 111%, then that's, oh nice, the top of this range. That's the first target for my altcoin. It's coincidence, I think, but pretty cool actually, nevertheless. Holy shit. That's around 530 billion, and that's cool because that is a new all-time high. And therefore, I think, like I said, that first target can lead to the next target pretty quickly, actually. Right, that this whole move is like a long wait, but then it doesn't stop that soon. When this not, you cannot imagine right now, as you've been into an altcoin reckoning for so long, but the other way around could be really fast, right? It could be really fast. Everybody says, fuck Bitcoin, Bitcoin don't work. Altcoins, like the euphoria, man. If you've been in an alt season, you may remember like how weird, like it's unreal, really unreal. So therefore, I do think that if this target is hit, it could stay there for a while, but eventually I think it's going to break down pretty quickly, actually. So we have to wait for this move. Are we going to go up first? Good. Like, I'm short term, I don't know. I'm not much of a short term person, actually. I think short term, it's all preparation. Long term, yeah, that's what matters. So I want to leave it right here. Fucking 50 minutes again.
And just like that, FOMO had 3 birthdays, 4 Christmases, and 6 Easterns. Does it make sense? No. But this is FOMO. I'm old now. I'm tired. I want to go to sleep. And if I will ever wake up, that's the only question together with when Altseason. Thanks for watching. Like the video. Subscribe. Turn the bell notification on. And if you think we won't see an Altseason,
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty gay.